Welcome back to Untaming Masculinity, the podcast where we tackle issues relevant to men and their journeys to reclaim their masculinity. I'm Dan, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host and good friend, Brad. What's going on tonight, man?
Not much, man. Battling a cold. I sound stupid. I went to jiu-jitsu this morning. I could barely breathe because everybody's choking me out.
Oh, I bet that was fun. Yeah.
So that's good times, man. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. It's been a good weekend. Crazy start to the week, but, we're getting after it. So
yeah, after it. Good, man.
Got my snowboard trip coming up next week, so I'm excited for that.
Yeah, that's right. How long are you going to be on? How long are you going to be doing that?
We head up on Sunday, ride for 3 or 4 days, and then come home on Thursday.
Nice. Be a good time, man.
Yeah, it'll be a good time.
All right. So tonight we have a guest. This is somebody who I consider a really good personal friend. His name is Ben Kjar. So Ben was born with Crouzon syndrome, which is a craniofacial anomaly. And as a young boy, doctors told him he would live a different life. And that's exactly what he's done. Ben has risen above any of life's challenges and become a victor, not a victim. Ben is Utah Valley University's first ever NCAA Division I Wrestling All-American and has represented the USA team internationally. Ben is an international professional speaker and has told his story to millions around the globe in front of crowds of up to 10,000 people. In the past 6 years, Ben has flipped nearly 200 properties and compiled a rental portfolio of almost 100 multifamily rentals and 3 storage unit complexes. Ben and his wife, Nicole, are proud parents of 3 beautiful adopted kids, which are 3 years old and under. Ben believes the real way to become truly wealthy is to travel and experience culture and its people. If you can connect with mankind, you will have a rich life. Ben, it's good to see you, man. How are you?
So good. What's up, boys?
Not much, man.
Dude,
how's it going?
Dan, coming from the East Coast. You're everywhere. Every time I talk with you, you're in I don't know, you own half the islands across the world, I think.
Oh my gosh, now you're just making up lies. Stop lying to the people.
You're a mastermind magician, man. I love everything that you're doing. Guys, I'm grateful to be here today. And there's very few subjects I like than this because the men across the world are being neutered in so many different ways. A lot of times emotionally, even more than physically, but physically is a physical side is an important part. A lot of men across the world are wondering, how can I have a better relationship? How can I have a better relationship with myself, with other people, with my wife, with my kids? And, hopefully we can get the people across the world who are going to listen to this, those answers. Give them a little inside scoop about, what's happening and how we can rise up as men, as lights, and show up better for ourselves and others.
So I kind of want to lead off with something you'd said there. You talked about building a good relationship with yourself. And obviously you've got a pretty powerful and a pretty unique story where something like that, loving yourself, wasn't necessarily taken for granted. Talk to us a little bit about your background, about who the man, the myth, and the legend Ben Kjar is.
Well, Brad, you kind of mentioned it at the very beginning. You said I was born with Crouzon syndrome. Now, Crouzon syndrome is a facial difference. For lack of better words, it made the mid part of my face grow at a different speed. The doctors would tell my parents that they should save a bunch of money, not just for the physical surgeries, but for all the counselors and therapists and psychiatrists that would need to deal with me on the emotional side. Why? Because a lot of people are in very dark places and hurt people, right? And so those hurt people are very open and honest about just other things that aren't normal. And I wasn't normal. I would look different. I'd have tons of different surgeries. I'd get my head cut open from ear to ear. They'd take bones out of different parts of my body to make me look somewhat normal. Eat right, breathe right, look halfway right? And so at a young age, I'll tell you straight up, I wished I was everybody else. I wished I was Dan and Brad and Trent and Brandon version 2.0. Being myself version 1.0 wasn't even in the cards, let alone as something I wanted to do. I thought, man, God doesn't want me to be me. I'm better off being a shadow of somebody else. The sad thing is when you become a dad and you're still freaking dreaming that. And you know what? When I mentioned being a dad and still dreaming that means if you're a dad, you have kids. And if you have kids, and you're the dad wishing that everybody else, because they have this much money or they got this pay raise or they have this car or this hot wife or whatever, and you're always dreaming that you're somebody else, What are your kids going to think? They're going to think the same thing. They're going to wish that they were somebody else because the standards that they have are the standards of their parents. The standards that you live by, your default standards, because you're not designing your life at all. You're waking up and living by default method every day. Your default standards that you live by every day in faith, family, fitness, finance, fun and fulfillment. If I call them my 6 F's, right? And if you are living those F's in an upside down way, your kids don't know any better. That's a beautiful thing about being a dad. And it's also it can be super intimidating, is that your kids know about standards in life because they look at you. They see you get up in the morning and do fitness. They see you go and do jujitsu. They see you get up and eat the right things. They see you treat your wife with respect. They see you do this and this and that. And so, anyways, long story short, the question you ask is, how was I able to start thinking that I could love myself? I had many experiences where I was the lowest, and I was able to find ways to look in the mirror and realize that even though I was different, I could make a difference. And my mom told me, even though I stuck out, I might as well stick out. And while I'm sticking out, I might as well freaking shine. And as I started to do that, and as I started to talk to the man in the mirror who was looking back at me more kind, and I was more considerate, and I was more patient, and I was less judgmental about the person who looked back at me, then I started to gain a relationship with that individual. And that individual actually started to become friends with the person who's looking at him in the mirror. And once I started not just becoming friends with that person, but I started to like and admire and look up to really me, myself, things started changing. My relationship started changing. I started to become more open and confident and humble and empathetic. And I could connect more with other people because I knew how to connect more with myself.
So that's a battle most guys go through, right? Is that when you look in the mirror, you don't like what you see, whether that's physically, whether that's emotionally, whether that's spiritually. It's a battle that every man fights. So you started young, being able to look in the mirror and tell yourself that you loved what you saw. That what you saw was not a victim of circumstance, but was a powerful man. So I guess the question becomes, how did you start to change that narrative? How did you start to look in the mirror and tell yourself, you know what? I'm an awesome guy. What did that transition look like? How did that start?
I think there are 3 transitions that I could talk about. The transition of vocabulary. Vocabulary can absolutely suck or it can absolutely be your superpower. I think we use the word try too much. I think our vocabulary and our verbiage to ourselves is not held accountable enough by ourselves. And if we can't hold ourselves accountable in those things and in our actions, then let's find a tribe or friends that can, right? Before this call, or maybe on this call, I don't remember, Brad, you talked about how you gained friendship with Dan and how you guys just, man, you know, this guy's cool. We can connect. And it seemed like even though you were states, almost a country apart, you felt like there was connection there. I hope that in your guys' friendship, there's also accountability, right? And so number 1, vocabulary that you tell yourself. Number 2, who's the people that hold you accountable? I'll talk about that in a story in just a minute. I'll just tell you right now. There was one time when I was young and I was in a grocery store helping my friend's mom pick up a bunch of groceries. She promised us that she would give us some chocolate if we helped her get all these groceries. It was like rush hour traffic. There was no automatic checkout, drone delivery, right, to our doorsteps that we have now. And so we're waiting in line. Finally, we're second in line. I felt like half the neighborhood was behind me. And as I'm second in line, I grab my Twix, I grab my chocolate. My friend's next to me. My friend's mom is putting everything on the little conveyor belt, getting ready to pay. And there's a man in front of me, and he had a little boy and a little girl my age. And he looked at me, knowing that I looked a little bit different than my friend. I stuck out. And he said in front of the whole store, I felt like half my neighborhood, I felt like heard it. He said out loud as he grabbed his kids Hey, look at that kid. Can you believe he goes in public? I can't believe he even has any friends. Look at his face. And he made fun of me for looking different. And I was used to playing the staring contest with my kids my age at school, at recess, that would make fun of me. I was used to going in restaurants and having this kid just like look at me and pull at his mom's dress and say, hey, look how funny he looks. But that was a come and go. I could rush out and dodge something at recess, or I could usually, get it to another place, or it was someone young enough to where their parents kind of, corrected them. But when it's an adult saying that, it hits you different. I remember looking down and thinking that if I could just imagine that it was my shoes that he was making fun of me for, I could take off my shoes, throw them 5 aisles away, and the pain will go away. But in my simple elementary mind, when I opened my eyes, it wasn't my shoes he was making fun of me for. It was my face, something I couldn't take off so easily. And then when I thought things couldn't get any worse, he grabs his kids, pays for his groceries, puts the kids behind him, and rushes him out to the car as if he was getting away from a monster, just like guarding his kids behind him, and says, hey, don't go near him. Get out to the car and don't touch him because he's probably contagious. And I don't want you to have that. Let's get out of here. And he rushed out. And he broke me, absolutely broke me. My friend's mom basically scooped me up off the floor, put me in the car, took me home. I ran into my parents' house. My mom was home. I ran in off my dad's office. I ran into the bathroom and just collapsed against the wall, trying to figure out a way I could take my face off. As an elementary age kid, nobody should ever have to feel that way, especially at that age. Luckily, before I had any smart ideas, my mom came in and she did something for me that changed my life. And this is the two things I'm going to answer in this story is what I just talked about. Number one, your vocabulary. Number two, it's going to be your accountability. My mom held me accountable as she sat there and cried with me. She eventually said, Ben, stand up, step in front of the vanity. And I stepped in front of the vanity and I was like 2'4", right? And she's like, look in the mirror. And as I was looking in the mirror, all I could see was my forehead because I was too short. And she's like, what do you say? I'm like, I can't say anything, right? Listeners out there has seen the movie Cool Runnings. Do you guys remember the movie Cool Runnings?
Oh, yeah, of course, man.
Yeah.
You remember the part where
tell me what you see.
Bar?
Yeah.
Yep. You remember that?
Look in the mirror and tell me what you see.
Yeah, Brendan grabs him, he pulls him in the freaking bathroom of the bar. He's like, look in the mirror, look in the mirror. And he looks in the mirror and he's like almost got beat up and he was being like a freaking snowflake out there, right? He's like, what do you see? And the guy's like, I don't know what I see. And then he just goes on, I'll tell you what I see. And then he cusses and he tells him what he sees. Well, my mom cussed a little bit less than that in this moment as she told me what she saw. And she told me that I could choose me. She told me that I was different. I was born different. So why don't you freaking make a difference, Ben? You're going to stick out. So why don't you freaking stick out? And why don't you, like I said before, shine while you're doing it? And people are going to say you can't do it. And that's when you say, watch me, baby. That's when you set new standards. And that's when you freaking do the work. And so in that moment, I had someone who held me accountable when I couldn't hold myself accountable. My verbiage to myself was positive. Instead of victim, why me, negative. Why was I born? Why do I have to cut my head open? Why do I look different? Why? Victim. Freaking snowflake behavior, right? Doesn't get you anywhere. My mom wasn't a coddler. She was a cuddler. She loved me, but she didn't wrap me in bubble wrap, put me in a mattress, and tell me never to go out in public. That's the accountability, people, you need. And then lastly, I freaking did the work. So the majority of my life, I told you I wanted to be normal. Eventually, I figured out that life was not to be lived comfortable and normal. And so eventually I started going into sports that I frankly told I wouldn't do or couldn't do, contact sports, baseball or football and wrestling. And I'll never forget in wrestling, and this is the third thing, put in the work. So number one, verbiage and how you talk with yourself. Number two, accountability. Number three, put in the work. This is what made me different in the best possible way. I would go to wrestling practice. My coaches would be like, 20 push-ups, let's go. And I remember, I'm like, okay. Eventually, after like a couple months, I'm like, everyone else is doing 20 freaking push-ups. So if I'm going to do 20 push-ups, I'm going to go to the end of the tournament and everyone's going to get on this podium. And the gold medal is going to be given to the person who did more. And I'm not freaking doing more. I'm doing what everyone else has been told to do. I'm doing the minimum. And when people were happy and cheerful and like all go lucky because they did what the coach asked, I decided that was pathetic because it was the minimum. And so eventually I was like, if I want to stick out, if I truly want to not be normal, and I don't want to be average, which is what I think it sucks to be average, I'm going to do more. And I did more. I did more push-ups. I did more sit-ups. I did more laps. And that helped me break records in my junior high, in high school and college, travel around the world as a professional athlete, and teach myself and others that it doesn't matter what limitations you have, you can freaking break through them if you live by incredible positive verbiage that you train yourself to follow every day, because it's a conversion every day. Number two, you have a tribe, an accountability partner. I don't know what that is for you. Is it a wife? Is it a buddy? Is it a coach? Is it a teammate? Is it a church member? And then number three, do you do the work? You do more than what's asked. And as you follow those three things, life will be a lot different.
It's three very simple things, right? Change vocabulary, find accountability, and put in the work. But how many men are not doing at least one of those things? And I'll bet that the vocabulary part is the one that guys have the hardest problem with, right? Because a lot of guys are willing to do work. A lot of guys are willing to find accountability or hold others accountable. But in those quiet moments when you, like you said, when you're looking in the mirror and you got to talk to yourself and you've got to see what you see and define what you see, having that right vocabulary is the hard part. So talk to us a little bit about the transformation that you went through in changing that vocabulary, maybe the words that you were thinking first, and then how you went about actually changing that.
I appreciate you asking that question. So people who are listening to this don't know who I am. And so I'm going to answer that a roundabout way by putting someone in the spotlight who I believe the majority of the world knows. Not everybody, but the majority. And that's a guy named Jesus Christ. So let's talk about positive self-talk. A lot of men and women, because there's going to be women hearing this, that are going to be listening to this for their men, for their husbands, because their husbands aren't freaking stepping up. And so they're just like, oh, I need to listen to this because we need some help, right? And so for you women out there, I'm giving you a virtual hug, baby. For you men out there, I'm giving you a bigger hug, because for a lot of my life, I'm a Christian. I was told to be like Christ. Let's be like Jesus. But isn't it interesting that many people who are told that, and even if you don't believe Christ to be someone spectacular in your life, he may have was at least a prophet or at least a superhuman that may have been just in books and maybe not real. I don't know. But at least he was someone like Superman that seemed to have been some cartoonish, outlandish dude that lived an interesting life. So with those perspectives, let's dissect this answer. How do you do that? I believe that in my life, I felt like if I had I am statements where after the I am, there's a blank. If in that blank, I said something so positive, so rocking, so freaking incredible, I felt like it was too much, or that I would be seen as arrogant. I would be seen as cocky. I would be seen as you're full of yourself. I would be seen as these type of things. Ben, your head's too big. Your nose is up here. You're in the clouds. Well, even though there is a fine line between self-confidence and cockiness, let's go to the perfect example in my mind, Jesus Christ. So if we're afraid to use I am statements that are so powerful and so earth-shattering, because right, what you're using right now isn't working, right? So you get to choose something. You don't have to, you don't need to, you get to, you deserve to use something that absolutely allows you to shift. So let's go to Jesus. If you go in the good book, if you go in whatever scriptures, the Quran, whatever scriptures you read, look at Jesus's I am statements. This dude who was homeless, who walked around with 12 crazy dudes, literally would stand in front of congregations and say, I am the great I am. I am the way. I am the truth. I am the light. Freak, this homeless dude would stand cuffed up in the middle of the king's court, the king of his time, and would be asked by the king, who do you say you are? And he would look up in the most humblest of ways, but with the power that would freaking shake an earth. And he would look at the king of that land and look in his eyes and say, I am the King of Kings. And yet that man has been seen by tons of people, millions of people, billions of people in humankind to be the most perfect individual to ever walk this earth. And yet we as men can't even muster our I am statements. And yet every day we pray to this person. Every day we say, how can I be more like you? And then you go to bed and say, I'm the biggest schmuck. I'm worthless. I'm hated. I'm not enough. I'm fat. I'm not tall enough. I look like this, X, Y, and Z. That right there is where we need to correct. We need to get to realize that we're more than enough. We're an incredible individual. We're a son of God. And if we have that type of DNA, that's pretty freaking powerful. I have a buddy, Jared Taggart. He was on a podcast the other night, and he wished that he was Michael Jordan. If I could just jump like him, if I could walk like him, if I could run like him. And then he made a quick adjustment and he said, but I quickly remembered that I have the DNA of God. Interesting. And isn't it interesting that we forget all too quick that our I am statements are way sissy? Yeah, they're way downplayed. And so when we realize that we are freaking amazing, it's incredible we're even freaking breathing every day, and we can make a massive impact, not a little impact, not a mini impact, a massive rippling impact, then that's when life changes for us and for other people.
It's easy for us to forget that we're created in his image. And as such, we have that potential. It's easy to forget those things. It's easy to tell ourselves those lies that we aren't good enough. And everything that you said just reinforces how important it is for us to recognize who we are, our divine nature, if you will. And one thing I know about you, Ben, is you and I obviously had a relationship. Like we go way back. You've always been somebody who has had people gravitate to you. I saw you go up to random people you'd never met before on the street. And when they heard you talk, they listened, no matter what. There's something powerful that you were saying. They might not have understood a word you were saying.
I know.
But they knew that you had something powerful to say and they wanted to hear it. So I guess the question becomes, when did you realize that there was something about you that was special that people gravitated towards? Because I think that that's really powerful in helping men understand what their capability is. That's
a really good question. I believe it's a daily thing for me. And it's a daily thing for me to understand the capacity that I have through trial and error a lot of times. Like, man, I do the best I can to show up every single day for me, my loved ones, and I fail all the time. Sometimes I look over at my wife and I'm like, do I suck at everything? Right? Am I suck at everything? And so after I just said what I said and then say what I just said, I bet you're just like, wow, that sounds weird. It goes to tell you every single person falls, fails, and has a choice to get back up. We suck in so many different ways. So every day, guess what? We get a rebound and suck a little bit less. My goal when I was younger was to be the best version of me that I could be. And I heard a mentor tell me this. He came up to me. He's like, hey, Ben, what do you think? We were talking about self-value and the power of individualism. And he said, and now, guys, we have 8,000 humans in this world. Or not 8,000, 8 billion humans. We have 8 billion. We just passed the 8 billion mark in this world. And, but yet, how many perspectives do we have? That's the sad thing. We don't have 8 billion perspectives because people become a clone of someone else. My mentor came up to me and he said, hey, Ben, what's the most expensive piece of earth in the world? And for me, I'm thinking, put my business hat on. I'm like, okay, well, who has the oil? Who has the riches? Who has all the resources? I'm like, Saudi Arabia, okay, Dubai, for sure, Dubai. They keep building these crazy things. And he laughed. He's like, interesting. A lot of people say that. He's like, what about the graveyard? What are you talking about? You crazy dude? What do you mean? He's like, Ben, think about it. The individuals who lost their individualism, who stopped sharing their perspective. I'm talking about the cure of cancer, Ben, is buried 6 feet in the ground because they didn't have the courage to speak their truth. There's so many cures. There's so many inventions that never made it to fruition because of fear. And it was when I was growing up when I realized that was I going to keep living a life of fear, or was I actually going to be the best thing that I could be in life? And if I could be the best in the world at one thing, just one simple thing, and the thing that would be the lowest hanging fruit out there that I could grab, it would be, how could I be Ben Kjar version 1.0 instead of everyone else version 2? How could I live me out loud? How could I flex me? How could I have freaking Ben Kjar swagger, right? And it became me buying into me. It became me being crazy me, owning me. Last thing I'll share here before I go on to the next thing. DJ Khaled. You guys know DJ Khaled, right?
Yeah.
One of the best DJs in the entire world, right? Another one. We the best. Verbiage. Interesting. He's sitting in an interview. I'm watching this. He's fantastic. He's like so captivating for me, right? He's so funny. He like speaks himself out loud. I mean, the dude wears, you watch what he wears. It looks like he robbed all the neighborhood window drapes, sewed them up, and wears them for pants and shirts, right? It's so funny what he's wearing, but it's his swagger. He's sitting down, he's taking this interview, and he steals the freaking interview questions. And he looks at the interview, he's like, oh, wait a minute. And he's sitting on his beach house, right? You see the beach behind him. He said, wait a minute. I got to ask you a question. And I'm going to ask you to ask me this question. You know how he is. And the guy's like, okay, I'll ask you the question. Tell me what I should ask you. And he says this, ask me if I'm crazy. And the guy's like, okay, DJ Khaled. And he just regurgitates what he says, right? DJ Khaled, are you crazy? DJ Khaled sits back. He's like, absolutely, I'm crazy. And then he goes on to make a point that the moment that you become crazy about yourself, basically, and crazy into yourself, is the moment that you start achieving you. Last example, Oprah. I wasn't going to bring this up, but it popped in my head. Oprah, one of the most fantastic human beings when it comes to living and not being a victim, but a victor. I don't agree with everything she talks about, but she's still an incredible, magnificent human. And she's in this interview and she says, There's been many people that have said, I'm full of myself. And I answer them this: what would you rather me be? Empty of myself? Would you rather me be empty of me? Is that what you want? Too many men think that is the answer. Too many men think to be humble and meek is to be weak. And I don't believe that's the answer. I believe you can be absolutely tenaciously humble. I believe in your relationships, you can be absolutely intensely patient. Do we fall? Do we fail? Do we lack? Are we imperfect? Yes, yes, heck yes, and yes. But do we still strive for incredible measures of accomplishment, achievement, and fulfillment in every aspect of life? Yes, yes, and heck yes. And I believe that's what we strive for. And if we don't reach that, let's suck a little bit less tomorrow and step up.
You mentioned something there. You were talking about how you wanted to be Ben Kjar 1.0 and be the best Ben that you could be, right? You hear that with a lot of guys. They talk about, I want to be the best me I can be. But how do you actually do that? How do you go about saying, this is what I'm working towards, this is what I'm achieving? Because it's a never-ending issue. You're never going to get there, right? You can always improve. So what are you doing on a regular basis to constantly be the best Ben that you can be, knowing that you're never actually going to reach that level?
You think I'm not going to make that level, but I believe that's the difference.
Yeah, but then you're going to pick another level.
But that level's going to continually rise,
my
right?
Accountability partner, and you better freaking step up for the man, right? And I'm being facetious in that, but absolutely I'm not. I'm being real too. So you know what? Here's the thing. I'm going to do everything I can to achieve that. And I'm going to believe I can even before I do it. And it's the verbiage. I mean, guys, I can't tell you how to better do this than just tell you stories of like real life stuff and then just making stuff up. I'm literally traveling with my dad. So I invest in real estate all over the country. We're in the Midwest buying some storage units. My dad's a huge example of mine. I brought it to him. I'm like, Dad, take a look at this. He's my attorney, real estate attorney. I'm like, take a look at this. I'm going to buy this. He's like, buy it. I want to buy this with you. I'm like, well, if you need to put some money, that's fine. I'm going to buy it with or without you. He's like, I want in. I'm like, all right, let's do it. And so he comes in and we go out to visit this property. We're in this hotel. I shower. I jump out. I'm getting ready. My dad jumps in. And as I'm getting ready, I'm just like, thinking in my mind what we're doing that day. And I hear this like incantation, this like cadence in the bathroom. And it's my dad's voice. I'm like, my dad, no way he can talk like this consistently without even hardly breathing while he's in the shower. Plus, that's just not his personality. Just keep doing this. So I go up to the door. I put my ear on the door. I'm like, what's going on? It's a recording that my dad put on his phone. And he had recorded it years in advance about storage unit numbers and quantities that he had achieved, properties he sold and purchased, service missions that he had went on. Not were going to go on, had went on, not properties that he had purchased, but that he had sold and purchased, meaning in the future tense. He was giving thanks and gratitude for the storage unit properties of the 5 and 7 and 10 that he had accomplished. I'm the family trustee. I know what he has. I know his portfolio. He didn't have any of that stuff, but yet he was giving gratitude in his phone about achieving those things in a past tense, as if he had already achieved it. And I'm like, this guy's psychotic. He comes out. I'm like, Dad, what were you doing? And he sits me down. He's like, Ben, you're going to realize one time that you are going to breathe and speak things into reality. I just happen to have thanked the universe for them way before they come about. Guys, 5 years later, as I'm speaking right now, he is serving a service mission in Canada in the same literal place that he gave gratitude for on the phone. He purchased those storage unit properties that he gave gratitude for. How do you do it? You freaking speak it into existence. You give gratitude and grace for the blessing of being able to achieve that. so you can do nothing but give good for that going forward. Does the universe work for us or against us? For us, if you believe it to be. Does God want to do incredible things for us if we don't bury our freaking talents? Yeah, he'll give us more if you know how to invest it and give gratitude for it. And as we do that, we get more. We become the attractive, magnetic possessor of those things. As we want more of something, and if you want something, give more of that. If you want more friendship, give more friendship. If you want more service, give more service. If you want more money, give more money. If you want more joy, give more joy. If you want more gratitude, give more gratitude. If you want more love, give more love. If you want more high fives, give more high fives. It's a symbiotic relationship, and you can claim it, you can give it gratitude into existence, and it will give it to you.
That really resonates in the sense that something that, we espouse oftentimes is building a vision. It's like, what is my future going to look like? Not what it could look like, not what I want, but what it's going to be. So the fact your dad was able to do something like that, not only, he took it a step further, it went beyond affirmations. It was essentially, these things happened to me. He essentially willed them into existence, which is amazing. I don't know, man. It's been a really, really powerful conversation. So I guess the question therefore becomes, what's next, man? I mean, you've already accomplished a whole lot. What is Ben Kjar 1.0 gonna tackle moving forward?
In the last couple of years, I felt a God calling that says I'm meant to move towards significance over just success. By nature, dudes, I am so freaking competitive. It's just the juices that flow in me, right? And so when I started flipping houses, I did what I felt like was the most competitive thing, and my ego would play part in that too, which has definitely not been my amigo in many senses, right? And then I would achieve that, and I would be flipping 40 houses at the same time across the country, and then wonder why I wasn't fulfilled, because the significance that came from that success wasn't the divinely feeling that I was meant to have, Brad, like you talked about, right? And so about in the last 2 years, I've been selling off a lot of my portfolio of real estate, been maneuvering my place in life differently. I adopted 3 kids all in 13 months. That was a trip. That's like the coolest thing.
Going 0 to 3 in 13 months is wild, man.
Yeah.
Wow.
I freaking have Irish triplets, right? I went from not knowing how to change diapers to learn how to somehow put 12 diapers a day, right? And it's the best calling I could ever hope for. So exhilarating, so frustrating, so tense and so stressful, but so fulfilling. To be the dad that I've always wanted to be has been so incredible. So what's the next step? To show up for my kids like they deserve to be showed up for. To show up for my wife that deserves to be showed up for. She's my queen. My kids are my princes and princess. And to show up for me, to show up for God, to shine for him. And there's different ways I'm doing that. So I've shut off the faucet of when I was buying properties every month. I shut off the faucet. And I'm starting to finish up my projects. Right now, I have a lot of big multi-million-dollar houses and motel and hotel renovations that I'm doing. And then I'm phasing my way out of that. I'm speaking a lot. I probably speak 50, 70 times a year. And I never had a website. I've never done it even the right way. It's just been word of mouth. And so I'm 95% done with my website. You guys can check it out. It's live, even though I haven't really launched it. It's at benkjar.com, benkjar.com. And I'm moving more to significance. I feel like when I'm on stage speaking and shining what I feel like is God's light and God's truth into impacting and inspiring and doing the best I can with what I know how, I feel like it's the place that God wants me to be. And there's not a better place than that. And at the end of the day, I know that if someone says I'm successful, it won't be the same as if someone says he was very significant in my life. And that's where I want to be. I want to be living a life of significance, of meaning, of purpose, so that I can leak that and spill that over into other people. And that's the next thing for me.
Love it, man.
It's awesome. I think that's probably a good place to wrap it up, man. It's been a great conversation. Really appreciate you joining us. We'll get a link up to the website and to I saw some social media on there as well, so we'll get that all linked up and ready for you. Any last words to the guys before we wrap it up?
I don't think so. Anything away from what we talked about. I would in a moment of doubt, I would find something to where you can react to your priorities. In the moment of choice, I would figure out a way to decide if you can make a choice based on priority, that you can have that outlined. For me, it's my F's. I joke around and I tell my wife, I'm like, this is the way I F my way through life, right? And it's my faith, and it's in this priority. And not that I live life in this priority. I wish I did more often, but it's my faith with myself, with my family, with my deity, with my people. It's my family. Where do I check in from my family? How have I arrived for them? It's my fitness, my mental and physical fitness, my finances. How do I provide for my family and their needs? It's my fun. Life's got to be fun. Otherwise, I don't know how we find joy. I think that's the purpose of life, to find joy. And then lastly, it's fulfillment. How am I fulfilling other people in my life? And if we're not hitting on those in some priority or another to touch on those things, then I just don't know if we have a map. We're living life by default instead of by design, right? Like a lot of people say. So find priority, find a structure, and then plan your life around that type of art and design.
Awesome, man. That's awesome.
All right, buddy. That was a killer way to end.
Yeah.
Ben,
thank you.
Thank you for taking the time, man. It means a lot to me. Yeah.
Brad, I just want you to know, dude, you're such a light, man. And I've known that from day one. And there's serious, dude, you're so abundant. And I hope you know that, because I don't know if we all do. And for a lot of my life, and I have so many doubts about myself so often, so much, always. And so when you have people around you that just pour into you, Brad, I hopefully you know that, dude, just the light and the influence and the impact and the massive human that you are. Because, man, there's just few men out there that I really think can bite onto that and really run with it, you know?
Thanks, man. Like I will say I know that now, but I'll say I didn't know that for a long time. This has really been within the last couple of years that I realized that.
All right. I think we'll wrap it up here. So, fellas, thanks for listening again. Ben, awesome. Appreciate you being on the show. That's all you guys are listening. Check us out on untamingmasculinity.com. You'll find show notes for this and all of our other episodes. If you found value, again, like we always say every week, leave us a rating and review on your podcast player. That helps us get the word out. And finally, make sure you come back next week. We got more great content like this coming your way. Until then, we'll leave you with just one question. What are you doing to untame your masculinity?